Welcome back. In the last series of steps in this specific section, we implemented the counter buttons. We added the increment and decrement buttons, or the increment and decrement counter buttons, and we added a counter as well. We also added a reset button. What did we learn through this example? We learned a lot of things related to a component. We talked about how you can actually implement logic in a React component, how you can react to an action, how do you react to a button click. We learned how to style stuff, right? We learned how to style stuff using a CSS, as well as how do you do inline styling, how do you use a JavaScript object to directly style stuff in JSX. We looked at how to manage your state. How do you set initial state in the constructor? How do you update the state using the set state method? We said all that we need to do is call the set state method, and React would take care of updating the component. We looked at how you can actually move the state from a child component to a parent component. One of the major decisions that we would need to make when developing React applications is where to put the state. Should I put it in the child? Should I put it in the parent? And you would find that in React applications, you would keep moving the state from one component to another component. And that's the experience that we wanted to provide you in this exercise. We also looked at properties or the props. We looked at how to define default props and also define prop types. We also looked at how to pass a parent method as a property to the child component. We passed the decrement methods and the increment methods from the parent component to the child component, so that when an action is performed on the child component, the parent methods are invoked. We will end this section with a simple exercise. We would want to completely remove the state from the child components, and we would want to remove all the unnecessary methods that we have in here, the increment and the decrement methods which are present in here, and directly call the methods which are present inside the parent component. How do we do that? You can pause the video in here and try it as an exercise. So all that we want to do is remove the decrement method, the increment method, the binding of these two methods, and directly call on click the parent method. Okay, let's get started with it right now. What we want to do is we would want to remove the state completely from the counter button, right? So I can start with actually commenting this. The shortcut to do this is control slash or command slash to comment this stuff out. So I'm commenting this stuff out. That's cool. I'm removing the binding. I don't really want the increment and the decrement methods, control slash. So now all that we have is the render method which is present in here. On click, what we want to do is we would want to call the method which is defined in the props, right? So this dot props dot increment method. Is that cool? And over here, this dot props dot decrement method. Now, does that work? Oops. Nope. Doesn't look like it's working, right? What's happening? Thing is, to the increment method, which is this dot increment, what we need to pass in? We need to pass in a by. We need to pass how much should we increment it by? How much should we decrement it by, right? So how do we pass that? You might be thinking, how would be able to do this? This dot props dot by, will it work? Oops, it says error. Actually, the way we would need to do this is by actually defining an arrow method. So what we need to do is over here, start a arrow method, and to this pass the this dot props dot by. Let's see what would happen. Cool. The plus buttons are working, minus are still failing because we need to add the arrow buttons, or actually arrow method syntax in here as well. Let's save this. enough plus 5 plus 6 minus 10 minus 5 minus 1 reset plus 10 reset. Cool, isn't it? So all that we needed to do is we needed to define a arrow function. So you cannot directly, if you want to pass a property or a parameter to a method, then you cannot define it in this specific way. What would happen when I do this? This method would be directly get called, and that's why we need to add the arrow method. The arrow method ensures that what we are defining here is a method, and we are providing a reference to this method to the on click, and when the event happens, the method is executed. So whenever you need to add a parameter to a event listener, so this is basically an event listener. Whenever you want to add a parameter to an event listener, the only option you have is to define a arrow method. You cannot directly pass the parameter in here because that would result in a method call. I'm sure you're having a lot of fun, and I'll see you in the next step. Until then, bye bye.